They say variety is the spice of life. Well, I'm adding some variety to my pine tree forest by trying some new techniques for making pine trees on Ron's Trains and Things right now. Hi, I'm Ron of Ron's Trains and Things, and if you'd like to see more model railroad tips, tools, and techniques, then be sure and subscribe down below and click that little bell icon so you can catch future videos. Way back in the very early days of my channel, I made a video about how I make my furnace filter pine trees. That was a very popular video, and to this day it's one of the most watched videos on my channel. And there are about 200 of those furnace filter trees already on my layout. Well, as I'm progressing in the scenery portion of this mountain area on my layout, I'm discovering that I would like to have more variety in my pine forest. It would look a little more natural and realistic to have a variety of different kinds of pine trees. But I've also run into a situation where I need a little different feature in some of my trees in order to fit into some of the terrain. And so today, I'm going to be working on making some bottle brush pine trees using wire for armature and trunks. And I'm going to show you exactly how I do that. Do you have some specific techniques that you like for making pine trees for your layout? If so, tell us how you do it in the comments section down below. Now, the area of my layout that I'm concerned about is right over here in this mountain area. Let me show you what the situation is. As you can see, the terrain in this area is very steep. Now, I built this terrain this way intentionally because I really liked the idea of having an actual physical separation showing some depth, where I've got a mountain arm here and then another mountain in the background. And once I get forest on these and get them filled with pine trees, I think it's going to give a great look. Using smaller trees in the back for some forced perspective, I think it's going to look really, really good. The issue here is the fact that this terrain is so steep that with my furnace filter trees like this one here, as you see, there's a real problem with planting these trees. Even drilling the hole into this at the right angle for a tree like this made with the bamboo skewer, just nearly impossible to get these trees in place the way they would need to be to look correct. So what I'm looking at doing is using bottle brush trees, specifically because they have wire armatures and they have a wire trunk, and so I can drill holes at an angle into this steep terrain and bend the trunk and plant them into place here. And I think that's going to work out very, very well. So we're going to go over to the workbench now, and I'll show you how I'm making these bottle brush trees, and you can see how they turn out. I know there have been a lot of videos made on making bottle brush trees, and I'm making one more, but I'm going to show you kind of what I have found. Again, understanding that I am making trees for an N-scale layout, and so I want something that's going to look right in N-scale. The processes, the technique that I use here, I think will work with any scale, but your materials may vary just a little bit in larger scales. Your basic materials for your bottle brush trees is going to be some kind of a fiber material. And I've seen a lot of people who have used hemp rope and cut it and separated the fibers. I had two issues with hemp rope. Number one, I really thought that the hemp rope fibers are probably a little too thick and heavy for N scale. Probably would look great in HO scale or O scale, but I think they're a little heavy for N scale. Also, I have no local supplier where I can find hemp rope. So that wasn't even an issue anyway. What I am using is a jute twine, and you can find jute twine at about any kind of craft store. It's used in all kinds of crafts projects, and jute is also a natural fiber, and so in that way it has similarities to your hemp rope, but the fibers are much more fine, which I think is going to serve me better for N scale. You're also going to need some wire. Now, I've played around with different wire gauges and options. I bought some steel wire, which is very fine. This is 24 gauge wire. I tried making some trees with this, and it just was almost too fine. It bent really, really easily, and it just felt like it wasn't really sturdy enough, wasn't really what I wanted. I had some 22 gauge wire on hand, and that was better. But the silver wire, as you'll see a little bit later when we come to the painting, it took a lot of painting to try to cover up the silver in the armature of these trees. And by doing that much painting, I found that it was causing problems with my fibers in the armature. So if I could find something that wasn't silver, it would be better. Well, I looked for florist's wire. I'd hoped to buy a roll of florist wire. I couldn't find a roll in the sizes that I wanted, but what I did find was this. I found this at Walmart, and I'm sure you get these at other craft stores. And this is 20 gauge floral wire, but it comes pre-cut. And in this case, this comes cut into 18-inch lengths, which, as I'll tell you in a few moments, was exactly the length that I needed. So as I get into this package here, we'll pull one of these out, and you can see this 20 gauge wire really turned out to be just exactly what I wanted. I really like my results with this 20 gauge florist wire, and it's already green, so it doesn't take too much to mask the shininess of that and work through that. As I've played with this a little bit, I've discovered that the wire you need, as far as the length is concerned, is maybe more than you might think. As I've played with it, I have discovered that whatever you want the height of your tree to be in inches, you want to add about 2 inches, at least 2 inches to that length, and then double it for the full length of your wire. So I want a 7-inch tree. That means I'm going to add 2 inches to that. That's 9 inches, and then double that. That's 18 inches. And it just so happens that these wires that I bought that come pre-cut are exactly 18 inches. If you're an HO scale or O scale, you're going to want a heavier wire than this anyway, but you're definitely going to want a longer length, so you'll want to get something you can get in a roll. The first step in this process is to separate out our fibers that we're going to use in the tree from our rope or our twine. Now, I've seen some people who will just cut all of these pieces of twine and fibers at the same length and then trim them to shape them when they get a little further in the process. But I found it's just easier to shape it later if I kind of start off with a general shape that I want. And I can do that by cutting various lengths of fibers. So you see, I'm cutting lengths, 4 different lengths here. Literally, I'm just taking each one of these, and this is literally just twisted and then twisted again as far as the fibers are concerned to make the twine. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to untwist this little piece of twine, and it's going to come apart into three little, I'll call them braids, whatever you want to call them, three larger strands. And then these individual strands here are made up of the individual single strands. And again, if you just kind of untwist them and begin to kind of rub them apart in your fingers, they're going to come apart in a nice, smooth fashion, just like that. Now, the shorter ones are easier to get completely untwisted than the longer ones are. So, you see that came apart very quickly, and then I can do these other strands very easily also. As you do this, sometimes you're going to find some strands in there that are just kind of tangled up, and you can mess around trying to untangle those. I have found it's a whole lot easier just to pull that tangle out and throw it away. This twine is cheap, and you're not going to miss much. So here's a piece right here, for example, that I don't know if there's some kind of glue that is used in this process or what, but that's just will not come apart, that little bit there. So I'm just going to pull that out, throw it away. And then also right here, I don't know if you can see this in the camera, but right here in the end, there's a little tangle, and I'm just going to grab that and pull that tangle out of the end there. And now those fibers, they fan right out. So, anything that where you've got fibers that are kind of sticking together or tangling up, pull that out. You'll find that life is a lot easier later when you do. The next step in this process, we're going to take our wire that we've cut to length, or in my case, it came at the right length, and we're going to double it. I hope you can see this. I think you can. I'm going to double it until I've got the two ends just right here together. And then I'm going to kind of bend this top. I don't want to bend it real tight. I don't want to kink the top, but I'm going to kind of curve the top. And I'm going to come in now with my needle nose pliers and grab that top, because I want to make a loop here in the top. So with my needle nose pliers holding the loop there, I'm going to bend that around You see how these wires are kind of crossing each other? And I'm going to take my, get that down pretty close because I don't want it real big. I'm going to take my needle nose pliers now. I'm going to hold the wire and I'm going to turn it to the right like I was tightening a screw, and I'm going to twist that all the way around about twice just to make a good solid loop. See what I've got there? A loop, a little bit of a twist, and then I'm going to straighten these two wires back out straight down below them, and there I have what I'm going to be working on using to make the base of my tree. Now, I've seen this done several different ways, and I'm going to show you how I like to do it. This may not work for everybody. Not everybody might like this process. But the way I do it, first of all, I'm going to work on a piece of wax paper because I'm going to use some glue. Again, that's the part that not everybody does, but I don't want the glue to stick to my cutting mat. I just want something for that to set on. And then I'm going to use a little bit of tacky glue, and I'm specifically using Aleene's original tacky glue. This works really, really great. And I've cut the top dispenser just to a really small hole. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply just a little bit of this tacky glue just to one wire on this armature. And I don't need very much of this. I can almost guarantee that whatever you put on is going to be too much, because it's almost impossible not to put on too much. And I'm going to start up there close to the loop, and I'm going to go down to within about an inch or so of the bottom. And then honestly, I'm going to take my finger and I'm going to wipe that down, because I don't want much of that on there. I'm going to kind of wipe it off of the bottom. Just need a little bit of that tacky glue on there. And the reason I'm using that tacky glue is as I put these fibers in, a lot of people will put these in and try to balance them between the wires, and it's really easy for them to just fall off and kind of fall by the wayside. By using just a little bit of tacky glue, I can cause these fibers to stick just a little bit to that wire, and that holds it in place just enough to keep it together as I twist my bottle brush. And you want to make sure that you don't get a lot of tacky glue on your wax paper that you're working on. If you do get some on there, wipe it off. Otherwise, your fibers are going to start sticking to the wax paper, and that also is not what you want. And here, I want to keep these wires separated for right now. So what I've done is just taken a clothespin, set the wide part down on the ground so it can kind of stand up, and then put the other wire, just clamped it up here in the top just to kind of hold them apart. And I'm going to start with the top of the tree up here at where I twisted my loop. So then I'm going to start with the shortest fibers, and I'm going to grab just a pinch. Now I want these fibers to be in here fairly thick, but I don't need them piled up. See, I'm going to kind of flatten them out into almost like a little piece of material, about like so. I want to keep the ends somewhat close to even. I don't want them spread out everywhere. And I'm going to put them between the wires, and I'm going to just try to center them as much as I can right on that wire, right up at the top. I'm going to push it down just a little bit into that tacky glue. And I'm going to put another pinch of those shortest ones on there. You're going to find as you do this, or at least I have, that you're going to use the most of your longest fibers. It just seems like it takes more of those, and you want more of them at the bottom. Again, we're going to come back and shape this more after we get further down the road. You see, I'm putting them fairly close together. Now you can leave some gaps in some places. It's pretty natural for a pine tree to have some parts of the tree where there's some gaps in the branches, and so that would look very natural, but you don't want gaps just all over the tree. So now I'm going to go to my next longer fibers and do the same thing. It's going to kind of even them up, push them right up here against those shorter ones. Looks like I'm going to use all of this length on this tree. And again, I'm trying to center these as much as I can on the wire. There are some strands that are kind of fly away here and there. We'll come back and fix those later. And then my next to the longest batch And I don't have a lot of these, so I'm probably going to use all of them on this tree too. I don't have a lot of them cut and separated yet, but that's okay. As you see, I literally had just continued to work my way down exactly as I was showing you there. Now I can put these wires together and we're ready for the next step in the process. Now I'm over here at my vise, and I'm going to bring my tree that I'm working on in here. And you see I have the bottom of the tree, the two loose ends of wire, and I'm going to hold those right together. I'm going to stick them, just the end of them, in my vise and tighten my vise down really just good and snug. And then I'm going to come through and just check and make sure that my fibers are as straight as I can get them, still centered, make sure everything still looks good. And that's not bad. Now, I've got my loop up here at this end, and so I'm going to come in with my cordless drill, and I'm going to take that cup hook that I have, and I'm going to put it in there, and I'm running this forward because I started turning that clockwise, and so running this as if I were driving the screw will continue to turn it clockwise. Okay, and there we have that. We want to make sure it's twisted all the way down to where it goes into the vise, so it's going to hold all of those fibers in there. And then just take it off of my cup hook. Now, as you noticed, as I twisted this tree with the drill, some of these fibers kind of twisted around the wire a little bit, and I want to untwist those. They should be caught in the wire itself, but I don't want them twisted around the tree. I don't really have that problem up here in the top where the fibers are shorter, but in the bottom where I have the longer fibers is where they tend to twist up. But if you just take a minute, you can kind of untwist those from around the wire, and then we're going to have something that be a lot easier to work with. I'm going to come in now with my little comb. This is my little mustache comb, and I want to do this very carefully. I want to just kind of pick through the fibers, just to kind of pick them out into individual fibers. Now, as you do this, some are going to pull out. Mostly what you're going to pull out is if you had some little tangles or knots that you maybe didn't really see, but are kind of in there. This is going to pull some of those out, and that's fine because those are just going to be loose things. The main thing here is you want to just kind of straighten the fibers up and get them to be individual, not bunched up. I could have done this earlier, but now before I start trimming, I definitely want to come in with a pair of wire cutters, and I want to cut this top loop and this excess wire off the top. And I'm just going to cut it right down, right at about where my very top branches are. Just cut that loop off and I can throw that away. Now I'm going to come in with my scissors, and I'm just going to begin to kind of trim this. And I like to start with the top and get the top trimmed down to the shape that I want, pretty tight against the point of that trunk of the armature there. Again, I know it still kind of looks like twisty wire now. We'll deal with that a little later. But I'm just going to come in and just kind of trim this. I want any fibers that are sticking way out, entirely too long. I'm going to cut those. Sometimes I get kind of fibers that are bunched up in here, and some of the bunches all begin to looking like they're the same length, and so I may cut some of those randomly just a little bit shorter, just to add some more random looking variety. Nature rarely looks perfect, and that's true of trees. Trees rarely look perfect. So now I think we are ready to apply some paint and begin to make this a good looking tree color. Now I'm over at my sound booth, and you'll have to excuse the noise. That's just the sound of the fan in the sound booth. But I'm ready to paint my my pine tree, and for painting it, I really like this Rust-Oleum camouflage paint. I think this kind of camo brown makes a great color for the armature of a tree, especially these pine trees that I'm working on. So that's what I'm going to use today. And I'm going to come in now with my tree. You see I've got on a nitrile glove just to protect my hand a little bit from the overspray. And now this is where the green wire comes in really handy, because if you've got silver wire, you've really got to paint this thing pretty intensely in order to paint that wire so the silver doesn't show up. With the green, if the little of the green shows through, it's okay. You still want to color most of that, but you don't have to paint it quite as intensely as you do with the silver wire. And so I'm going to try to paint this as lightly as I can, but I still want to make sure that I cover up all of the light tan color of my fibers. So that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to go work in just light bursts of paint until I get this painted. It's just a spurt like that. And it's also good to come at it at both directions, both kind of angling from the bottom like this and also from the top like this. That way you get good coverage on all of your fibers. Make sure you get the top good, and a little spot right there, and that's all there is to it. You see, that didn't take much paint at all, and I've got this nice kind of greenish brown color. And now I'm going to stick this in a piece of foam and let it dry for just a little while. It doesn't have to completely dry, but I don't want it wet whenever I go on to my next step. Now we've got one of our painted trees here, and we're ready to put some flocking on it to kind of simulate some pine needles. I used to do this strictly with hairspray, and I discovered that over time hairspray kind of tends to turn loose. And so I kind of do a two-part process now. I start with some kind of a spray adhesive, and this Elmer's spray adhesive works pretty good for this process. I wouldn't want to use it for everything, but for these trees it works great. And so what I do is I use the spray adhesive on the tree and then apply the ground foam, and then I come back when I'm finished and coat it over the top with some hairspray, and that kind of gets rid of the stickiness of the spray adhesive. And then once that dries, it dries very, very solid. So I'm going to spray this with some spray adhesive, and I got a trash can down here under me. I know you can't see that, but I'm going to spray it into the trash can just until I've got a good coat on it. And you'll know you got a good coat on it because it's going to look frosty. There, and you can kind of see the frosty look. And then I like to apply my my ground foam with two colors. I start with a dark green, a conifer green, or I think this is actually Weeds from Woodland Scenics. And I want to coat this onto my tree, and I want to do it from every direction. I want to do it from underneath, like this. I want to do it from on top. Hope I'm getting all this in the camera. Just want to put a nice coat of this green on there. This is going to be your general tree color. Kind of give you the sense of pine needles or whatever. And of course, you'll notice that I'm doing this over a cardboard box because whatever I'm dropping down there, I can reclaim and use again. Just stick it back in my shaker bottle. Okay, and there's the general color of the tree, and then I'm going to come in with a lighter color. This is, I think, burnt grass, and I'm just going to hold the tree kind of upright, and I'm going to sprinkle just a little of this on from the top. Turn it again. I don't want to do this from the bottom, just from the top, and this is going to kind of simulate a little lighter variety of color on the tops to kind of simulate sunlight. And there we have the tree in finished condition. Now, You know, this is ready as far as a pine forest kind of a situation is concerned. That's ready to go on the layout just like it is. Now, obviously, if this is going to be a foreground tree, you're going to want to do something else with the trunk if you're going to see the trunk. And there are several things you can do. I'm not going to cover that as much in this video, but you could take a dowel rod and drill a hole and stick the dowel rod over this trunk right up to the branches and paint it and simulate a trunk that way. You could cover that with like drywall mud or spackling, some kind of material like that that will get hard, and you can layer it on there and then scratch some bark detail into it, get a little texture into it. So you can do several different things as far as the trunk is concerned. But in my case, for the most part, I'm going to need hundreds of these in a pine forest, and they're going to be so densely packed together that you won't see the trunks of any of them. So I'm not concerned about the trunks on most of the trees. When we get down to the front of the forest, then we'll come back and I'll show you specifically in another video exactly how I handle the trunks of the trees at the front of the forest on my layout. And here are some examples of some finished products. Now, as you see, I've been doing some experimenting with color and different things. Just by way of comparison, this tree on the far left is one of my furnace filter trees, like I made in the previous video, and like you've seen a number of on my layout already. All the rest of these are bottle brush trees that I have made. You can see they come out with a bit of variety. I've used some different colors. The two on the far right are some trees that I just made. This is the one that you just watched me make on the very far right, and used some brighter colors on those. These other twos I used some darker or more muted colors. You know, this tree here, and that's not a particularly pretty tree if you had it standing alone, but as you see, if you get it mixed in with some other trees in a pine forest, it will blend in and look very natural. Some ugly trees mixed into a pine forest will look natural, actually will make it look more realistic. So that's how I am making these bottle brush trees, and if you've not tried these before, they're really easy. They're very inexpensive. So I hope that you'll give these techniques a try and let me know how they turn out. I'm really pleased with the variety that these bottle brush trees are going to add to my layout and to the pine forest in this mountain area on the upper deck. And I also think that these wire trunks are really going to help me in that steep terrain section. I'll be working on the scenery of this part of my layout over the course of the next few months, so you'll be seeing a number of videos about different portions of the building of this scenery, including some water features and a large waterfall. That's something you can look forward to in coming episodes. I hope if you haven't tried making bottle brush trees that you'll give this technique a try. It's fairly easy, it goes really fast, and you can make some beautiful pine trees with just a little bit of practice and some simple and inexpensive materials. Well, if you enjoyed this video today, here's a link to some more scenery building videos that I think you'll enjoy as well. Be sure and check out the description down below and see my Amazon page and my Amazon pick of the week, as well as my Patreon page and ways that you can connect with me on Instagram, Facebook, and other social media. I hope you'll join me again next Tuesday as I'll be bringing you another great model railroad video, and I look forward to seeing you then. Lizzie?